There's a whole lot of people who won't even start a quit because they're afraid of the withdrawal process. They've got this imagery that it's going to be, terrible, that it's going to be, just almost, risking their life to go through drug withdrawal, that it's going to be this horrible, painful, long, dragged out experience that's going to last forever and is impossible to get through. This is the imagery that a lot of people have. That's why a lot of people are still smoking, because they're afraid of quitting. And it's a problem that's being perpetuated by pharmaceutical industries that, come out with, ads. One of the major ads out there at this point in time was, quitting sucks. Quitting is just terrible. And again, this plays well for a pharmaceutical industry that's trying to sell a product, that you have to buy these products to get through these horrible, terrible, disabling withdrawals. But I gotta point out, for most people, withdrawal just isn't that bad. Now, there's some extreme cases. When I had clinics, I had a few people in clinics who had real intense kind of withdrawals. Nothing life-threatening. It was never like that. But, they're classic stories in the clinic, because if anybody was in a group where one person had it, they would come in and share this one experience. There's probably a handful of people that had, just real intense anger that showed during the group and what the people were saying, or some real intense, physical symptoms that just, they looked terrible. They looked like they were going to die. I talk about this every now and then. And when I say every now and then, maybe every fourth or fifth clinic, with 30 to 40 people being in a clinic. So we're talking about one person probably out of 100, if not higher, that are having real intense withdrawal. On the other side, you had those people who came in who had nothing. They were expecting these horrible, horrible experiences, and they had nothing. Most people are in the middle there. But even that middle is probably more lopsided toward the easy side than it was toward the horrendous side. So, is it possible that a person may have pretty intense withdrawal? It's possible, but is it likely? That's a kind of different question. And one of the strings that I put up on the board a while ago was, tell what withdrawal was really like. And I know I took a chance when I put up that string, because I may have gotten, someone who had some pretty intense reactions. But, if you look at it overall, I don't think anyone actually did come up with anything extremely intense. But if you look at overall, the numbers, you can see most people have an easier time than they ever anticipated. Well, you know what? That's pretty much easy to show in most cases, because if you talk to people who've quit smoking, and again, when I did this on the board, or when I talk about it in clinic, most people who would come into the program were pretty well convinced upon joining they weren't going to succeed. Why weren't they going to succeed? Because quitting was going to be too hard. It was going to be too difficult. There was no way they could pull it off. Just by the fact that they pull it off, it's better than what they thought it was going to be, because they thought quitting was going to be impossible. And it wasn't impossible. And this is crucial for, anyone who currently smokes to understand quitting smoking isn't impossible. It is quite probable if you really treat this as the drug addiction it is. And it's also quite probable that it will not be as bad as you think it's going to be. It is possible that it's going to go the other direction and be worse than you thought it's going to be. But let's understand, as bad as it might be, even in a worst case scenario, if a person having the worst withdrawal in the world ever goes and compares notes to people who are now going through lung cancer treatment, people who are crippled, permanently crippled with emphysema and suffocating on a daily basis, people who are, again, now are amputees and are still having circulatory problems because of their continued smoking, if the people in withdrawal compare notes of who suffered more, people who went through withdrawal from quitting smoking, or people who didn't go through withdrawal because they didn't quit smoking, and instead they continued to smoke to avoid withdrawal and got smoking-induced conditions that, again, were life-threatening, very realistically life-threatening. Again, sometimes people use the term life-threatening, meaning, it can happen to some people. Again, smoking kills 1 out of 2 people who do it. And then with the understanding that the other half don't get away scot-free. They often have major problems, major crippling problems, major impairment problems, and suffering. Suffering that isn't like a 3-day process. There's very few conditions that smoking causes that you can go to a doctor and say, oh, go through 3 days of discomfort and this will get better and you'll be fine. No, that's not the type of conditions that smoking cause. They cause conditions that can make you suffer for months or for years. Or they cause conditions that almost have no suffering because you get a sudden attack and you're dead on the spot. Understand what you're fighting for if you are having withdrawal and why you're going through it, the importance of going through it. But also understand, if you're a smoker right now, not to let the concept of fear of withdrawal be a variable stopping you from quitting. Because again, in all likelihood, it's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. It's probably going to be a lot better, and it may not be bad at all. Whatever it is, get through 3 days. Whatever's going to peak at that, but will peak by that point. Some on day 1, some 2, some 3, and then once you get through there, you're not going to have the real strong physical kind of reactions. Psychological, sure, there can be triggers, and there's lots of material you'll find in these videos and our resources covering it. But the potential for the intense reactions are short term. You get through a 3-day period, they will start to get better and better. And then to avoid ever having to deal with withdrawal again, a good or a bad one, but ever having to deal with withdrawal again in any way, shape, or form, it's still just a matter of sticking to the personal commitment you made the day you stopped to never take another puff.